Okay, let's call the meeting to order at 6:07. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We are, believe it or not, this is our regular meeting number 70. How about that? Nancy, you've got attendance, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We have under old business minutes from August 9th. Any corrections? Well, we've got a motion to approve by Mr. Ike. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Patrick. Thank you very much. Comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Patrick.
Nancy, one really super minor edit, but on the sentence about where Lois asked about aesthetics and other things, the first aesthetics is missing an A. Very simple, very, very minor. Sorry, I hate to even mention it, but
Oh, I'll
Patrick,
fix it.
Patrick,
Yeah.
I looked it up and that is acceptable without the A.
Oh.
Okay, because there's
Because
one with it.
I thought the same thing.
Oh,
about
gosh,
that?
okay. Well, then, all I would say then is make them consistent, because there's one with the A and one, it appears twice, one with, one without.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Otherwise, it looked good.
Any other comments? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. All right, thank you for that. Okay, so new business, just to bring everybody up to speed, at the last town council meeting, there were two action items regarding us. Number one, the council voted in favor of moving forward with the Prosser Library project, and we thank them for that. And then they voted unanimously to not go forward with a referendum in November for additional funding. So we thank them for considering that. So the money we have is the money we have. Just to outline some goals for tonight. Number one is moving forward with Prosser. So we're going to be talking about some value management things and some trade contracts to go forward with. Downs is going to present all that. And then I want to start a discussion with our architect on proceeding with what we can do with McMahon, and just figuring out how we develop some alternatives, some plans, what are we going to be doing with that? So we'll be talking about that as well. And then we'll hear about our swing space from Chip. Lois, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mark. I wonder what parameters they gave us, the council. Did they say to develop Prosser as presently planned? Did they allow for the value engineering? Did they suggest there could be something other than that? Are we on track to do what we intended to do with Prosser? Were there any parameters given to us at all?
No. We had presented our current dollar figure to them, which did include $1 million of value management overall between the two projects. So, our intent was to include at least $750,000 of reductions for Prosser, but those were the only changes we had presented, and they were acting on that information to move forward.
So your sense is that we are moving forward with our plan, including the value management, and that's it.
That's correct. That's correct.
No.
Although we have not formally acted on all the value management yet, and I know Downs and TSKP are looking for us to start doing that, especially with items that TSKP has to, put to pencil and paper to make the changes. So we'll be talking about those tonight.
So they understood that we are going to have the Prosser Library as proposed and whatever we can manage for McMahon.
That's
They-
correct.
They understand that.
That's correct.
And we were directed to proceed by them in this fashion.
That's correct. I mean, I can read the motion for you. I think that might help clarify
That would help, thank you.
that they passed. And if you bear with me 1 second.
Nancy, I would be grateful if this motion that Mark is reading could go into the minutes.
Sure.
The town council approves moving forward with the demolition of the existing Prosser Library and construction of a new facility on the same site, including site structures, furnishing, and equipping as envisioned in the 2021 referendum, with the limitation that the entire 2021 referendum authorization of $29,255,000 may not be spent on this portion of the approved project as advised by bond counsel. So that says that we cannot spend all of the money available on Prosser. We have promised to, by virtue of the wording of the referendum, we're obligated to spend money on McMahon Wittenberry Library.
Thank you.
And Lois, there were several whereases and additional information that were also part of that motion. Mark read the resolved, but I'll include the whole thing in the minutes.
Okay, let's go on to Downs update. Who's here? We've got Tom and we've got John Downs and we've got did I see Anthony's here as well. Floor is yours, gentlemen.
Anthony, if you wouldn't mind sharing the screen, I'll kind of kick us off with an overall budget update and then talk about what we want to accomplish, but I hopefully can rely on you to go through the value engineering.
Absolutely. I got right now, I'm just showing the agenda of what we plan on discussing.
Okay, so as far as a budget update, we've essentially completed most of the scope reviews. We've got a couple left to go, nothing major or of any concern. We're looking very good as it relates to the budget that we've been presenting and we've been talking about. So what you see on the screen here is really a budget as it relates to our construction budget. Now, keep in mind that we've been talking total project budget a lot as it relates to each individual project. And as you have heard previously, we had talked about a total project budget for Prosser of $32,796,861. When you carve out the construction portion, Anthony, if you wouldn't mind just highlighting the $27,195,394. That's really our target right now. And right now we're tracking at 27 million. I'm sorry, did I say 27,000? $27,091,885. So we're in pretty good shape. The one thing I did notice looking at this report is that our original pre-construction and our amendment number 1 for the lead consultant is not in that, which is $50,000. So right now, preliminarily as a draft GMP, if you will, we are within $50,000 of the total project construction budget that we've been presenting. And that includes the $750,000 value management number that you're going to hear a little bit more in detail about. We hope to have a fully comprehensive draft GMP out by the end of the day Friday, complete with clarifications, assumptions, exclusions, allowances, and we're happy to go through that in detail. But what we thought was appropriate because we're really trying to hit the ground running here with the procurement side of things. And something that has been effective in the past with other projects is to get a recommendation or an authorization to release critical bid packages. Anthony, just pop back to that real quick. I just want to touch on the value of that. Yep, so we're asking for official approval from this committee to proceed with $11,462,271 of trade contractor authorizations, which is roughly about 42% of the total project budget. And we crafted a cover letter. Anthony, if you wouldn't mind just jump into that and maybe just zooming out just a little bit, certainly on my screen. I just want to show everybody the language that we have there. So these are some of the critical packages that either we need immediately to begin our mobilization process and or need to immediately start the submittal process for long lead construction related items vis-a-vis the ever famous switchgear, which is all baked into that custom electric bid package of $1.9 million. So we have, Anthony, what do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 9 bid packages that we would like to proceed with to issue letters of intent to kick off this project, totaling $11,462,271. And then, Anthony, if you just scroll to the next page, we've organized it in a fashion that would garner, sign off. It references the fact that we did very detailed scope reviews that your owner's project manager, Chip from Colliers, the design team have all participated in. I believe they can advocate to the due diligence that we went in to scope everybody out. It references everything back to the bid documents, which is ultimately going to be part of our guaranteed maximum price, and kind of offers us a mechanism to move forward and keep the project on track. If there's Mark, I don't know if it's appropriate to take some questions on this, or we pause for a minute to continue to go through things and then we circle back for discussion on this, because we have a little.
Yeah. Let's take action on this. How about a motion to approve Downs proceeding with these 11 bid packages?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike. Do we have a second? We will be discussing this.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Patrick. We have a second. Okay. Discussion? Lois?
If we approve this motion, we are in fact committing to going forward with the project as we anticipated and having a much more minimal project happen, at least for the present at McMahon. Do we all understand that? Do we all agree that it's the thing that we want to do and that we must do for the town council? I really would like to, if people vote yes on that, that's what we are saying.
From our
Lois, that is correct. That's proceeding with Prosser as we recommended to town council. Other comments? Patrick?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, so just to follow up on what Lois was saying, so just by voting on this to move forward with Prosser, I mean, it's not prohibiting us from continuing to, I know you talked about, putting some kind of ideas together about McMahon and alternatives and so forth, but it doesn't preclude us from seeking other forms of funding. Should there be anything out there, we could still continue to do that in an effort to, do more with the McMahon Library than what we were planning to do, with what's left. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So
Right.
we're not just limiting it, by this vote, we're not limiting McMahon to what's left over from the original amount.
As you said, we would have to find additional funding somewhere.
Yes,
And we're not
agree.
counting that out.
Right, okay, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nancy?
Yes, this also, Tom, would this stop? This is not going to have any negative impact on any additional value management beyond the $750,000, would it?
No, it would not. And quite frankly, the value management effort, as we normally proceed with our work, that is always something that is in the forefront if something does come up outside of the list we've already generated. So absolutely not. We've already talked to all the subs. We have preliminary pricing. What we really want to do here is we want to stop the clock on bids potentially expiring and afford us the opportunity to start the procurement process in advance of hopefully next week or the week after bringing the full GMP to you anyway. So it just kind of affords us to run some things concurrently. And we've got to award the contracts for their base bid numbers anyway, and then process official contract change orders for the value management in accordance with the public bid process.
Okay, and we anticipate a GMP at our next meeting, do you think?
Yes, yeah, we'll have it out by the end of the day, Friday. We were working pretty diligently on it most of the day today, double checking numbers and making sure our clarifications, exclusions were complete. We fully expect that we will walk everybody through it. We fully expect to address comments on it as a normal procedure in agreeing on a project of this magnitude.
And Tom, just for everyone's edification, could you just again repeat what GMP stands for and what it actually is?
GMP is a guaranteed maximum price based on the bids that we received and the contract documents that were prepared primarily by TSKP Studio and in the scopes of work, the logistics, the instructions to bidders, and the schedule that was developed by us at Downs to provide a guaranteed maximum price for the project and agree on a substantial completion date for your project.
Thank you.
More questions or comments on the motion? Do not see any hands. Chip?
Yeah, I just saw there. Is there anything we need to do with the grants before releasing this? Is there any notification that's needed on GMP or anything else?
That's a very good question, Chip. Yes, there is. And Scott and I actually talked about that. He has to notify, or we have to notify DECD with a bid tabulation. And we actually have to give them contracts of the subcontractors. So this process falls right in line with the deliverable that we have to turn over to DECD. So eventually we do, but we have been in contact with them and we could start tracking that on our owners meeting minutes, Chip. So that's a very good thing to bring to the forefront. But by approving this, I think we fall right in line with the sequence of events that need to happen to solidify the grant.
And Tom, the DECD just requires us to notify them, correct? They don't retain any authority to thumbs up or thumbs down, correct?
Correct. We got the thumbs up from them to go out to bid. So we adhered to their requirements. We justified the public bid process. And now we're going to provide them with the bid tabulation of kind of the result of the bid process. And then at the end of the job, there is a closeout period and process that we need to adhere to as well by providing them with the architect's substantial completion letter, final lien waivers. They also require some as-builts, but all of that stuff is just a small snippet of what we're going to provide at the closeout period anyway. So it's just carving out some of their very specific items. So we'll have a touch point at the end of the job with them as well.
More questions, comments before we vote on this? Okay, so we have a motion to approve Downs to go forward with these bid packages. All in favor, please raise your hand. Bob Ike has his hand up, yes.
Okay, how about I call roll, because I'm having a hard time seeing.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah, please do that, Nancy.
Okay. So Bob Ike,
Yeah.
Patrick,
Yes.
Lois,
Yes,
Liz Waterhouse, Jesse White.
Sorry,
there's Liz.
technical difficulties.
That's okay. Are you a
Yes.
yes? Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Jesse White, I didn't get Jesse, but I'm sorry. Mark Weissman.
Chair votes yes.
Okay, so it's 5-2. I don't know what Jesse is. I'll follow up with him, but the motion passes.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you, everyone.
all right, thank you. What
One
else you
more.
got for us, Tom?
One more critical update, I think before we turn it over to Anthony to kind of go through value engineering. The approval that you guys just gave us today was huge because we are still waiting on the flood management certificate approval from DECD, or actually from DEEP through DECD. So our team, as well as the design team, has been following up on that very diligently. There is a draft in DEEP's hands to be turned around. I think Scott and Rock from SLR have recently followed up today. That is certainly on our forefront to follow up every day, because without that, we can't officially put boots on the ground. Right now, our schedule, and Anthony, this might be a quick transition to the schedule PDF, and just kind of blow that up there and that highlight. We have been talking about a September mobilization, still well within the cards for an 18-month schedule, but right now, the DECD approval of the flood management certificate is our critical path to begin mobilization. And I know the design team is working closely with the building department to issue the final building permit. So we will keep everybody up to date as it relates to that, but that won't hold us up, because also the critical path is getting submittals and procurement going, which tomorrow morning we will jump on. So that's a quick snapshot of the schedule. And just to kind of, Anthony, just scroll to the last page of that. Go to page 8. I just want to show everybody, and maybe zoom out just a little so everybody can kind of see the detail of the schedule. Yeah, so there's about 8 pages there, just so you can see the closeout of Prosser is in May. Owner FF&E is right in that kind of sweet spot of March and April. Certificate of occupancy the end of February. Just back out one more page, go to page 7, please. So, and there is kind of the level of detail that we will be reporting on and will be included in our monthly reports going forward. So just one more quick highlight. If you kind of look at the Riley parking lot section, Anthony, right there, set erosion control, September 14th, just to give everybody an idea of kind of what boots on the ground kind of looks like. That would be one of the very first activities, would be putting up your temporary fence, establishing our site logistics, and implementing our sedimentation and erosion control plan, which would be in line with the deep permit and the flood management certificate permit. And that's why it's so important to get those documents completed and officially approved, because it's quite frankly one of our first activities. And then Anthony, if there's unless there's any questions on the schedule, I think we can jump to the value engineering log. And if you want to kind of walk through, and then I would expect TSKP might want to chime in on some of those.
Absolutely. Lois, so you have your hand raised.
I do. Mark, may I ask a question?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
If you don't get the deep permit, where do you stand?
If we don't get the flood management certificate, we will continue to proceed with the procurement. We will present our GMP. We will likely have a clarification, an assumption on the approval of that flood management certificate, assuming a date, so that we can keep the project moving. And then once we do get that flood management certificate, we will evaluate an impact, if any, on the schedule. And then we would have to report back, Lois. But the critical path right now is getting materials and equipment through that submittal process and on order.
I get that, but I guess I wish you had mentioned this particular issue before we voted. Maybe it isn't important, but it seems to me if we don't get that permit, everything else could get set back. Am I right or am I wrong about that?
I don't think that it's a matter of if we get it. I think it's a matter of when we get it.
I hope you're right.
That has been our experience. We would not be making that recommendation otherwise. And I would ask for TSKP to chime in, and we could certainly follow up with additional clarification from their engineer, who has been kind of leading the charge with that approval process. But we have been through this before. It does take time with the state. Unfortunately, some of the things, as we have all experienced, have slowed a little bit, but we're at the goal line.
Tom, hi, this is Richard Sipek. I do want to chime in because we've been monitoring this as well with Rock Emond from SLR, who has been communicating with DECD as well as DEEP. There's been no indication of a problem. I think it just has to work its way through the process. So I concur with Tom. I think it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
But I also understand, Lois, that by giving Downs approval to move forward on these trade contracts, there's things they can now do between now and receiving that permit that needed to be done. So that's my understanding.
I think one of my problems is that I haven't had this particular experience. I have had others experience with DEP, having worked there for 12 or 14 years. So sometimes things go bad, but I'm assuming you know what you're doing, and I'm grateful, and let's get it done.
You're right, Lois. There's always a risk, and it wasn't intentional that we put that agenda. We talked about that first, just happened to be in our thought process is all.
Okay.
All right, Anthony, if there's no other questions and you want to jump to value engineering, I would say the floor is yours and just zoom in. If kids are acting up in the back, I will take
Yeah,
over.
I'm just gonna put the caveat out there. If you guys hear a 2-year-old screaming and I have to get up and run, just bear with me a little bit. All right. Okay, so what we did here, I know Scott's gone over this with you guys. We went over it last meeting and then we went over it at the owners meeting. But we did sort it by approved items and pending items at this point in time. As you see, the pending items aren't carried over in the recommended column, so those aren't getting adjusted to that $783,000 as you see below. But I like to just touch upon each item one by one that's been approved at this point. Okay. The first one, item number 4, we have a review manufacturer of the Bridge Brothers in lieu of contact. That was a credit of $435,446, which has been approved and applied. Okay. Item 6, the snow melt at alternate, the masonry, steel, gypsum, drywall package and electrical. We had a pending number 3 on this line item here for $62,540. That has actually gone down from what we originally thought would be $100,000. So at this point in time, we're looking at a $40,000 difference there, which is good. That's an add at this point because it's the alternate, correct? Item 10, we're still reviewing this with our millwork subcontractor, but this is to change the birch wood species to pelam at the sills. We need to just confirm that with Desco, who is our millwork subcontractor, and get approval from TSKP before we can move it over. Okay. Item 13, line item 13, reducing square foot of fire rated curtain wall. That was a savings of $85,000. Okay. Item 15, provide storefront in lieu of windows. That was a $26,600 credit coming back. Item 16, this is we still have this impending, but I feel at this point in time with TSKP's knowledge and Mark and everybody that has reviewed this, I don't believe we're going to delete the sun control devices at this point in time, but we are trying to figure out if there is some sort of different manufacturer that we could use that could cut the cost down a little bit from where it stands. So that is still pending. That's why we kept it there. That is not being carried over into the total value of the value engineering at this point. Item 19, aluminum feeders in lieu of copper. We have approved of a $16,000 VE for that to change from copper to aluminum with our electrician. Downsizing the conduits to the roof feeders for the PV system. That's a small little value engineering item that we like to include. That was approved, and that was a $3,000 savings. Different lighting package. I know TSKP and Deanna and all them have been working diligently to produce a different lighting package or reach out to some of the providers that they have reached out to at the beginning of the project. So we still have this impending. We don't know what the dollar value is yet, but we could assume that there will be some cost savings there. Just haven't gotten to the end of that yet. Item 22, which is the Wagner lighted railing. That would be a cost savings of $40,000. That $40,000 includes what we feel a number would be for the Miss Meadows to provide a railing. We will need a railing there if this one does get approved and removed. So that $40,000 credit includes the added work to replace that system. Item 23, remove paver banding and replace with concrete finished over the entire plaza entrance. This was part of the site work package. This has been approved. It was a $39,455 value engineering cost savings to the project. Item 26, reduce scope of plantings from the addendum. That was a small value engineering item of $4,400. During our scope review process, we noticed that our landscaper did not carry all the required addendum. So he went back and he took a look, and we have a savings of $4,400 based on the addendum changes through the bid period. Reduction in waterproofing concrete subcontractor. TSKB provided us additional direction on what we could remove for waterproofing. Right now, I'm still kind of going through it with our concrete supplier. We're not sure if that $20,000 will stick, but right now we do have it plugged in there. We got to do a somewhat of a quantity takeoff to make sure our numbers and their numbers jive. Item 20, line item 29 is the DFIS work. We do have a credit coming back from the mason for this DFIS applied at the canopy. We do have that number of $19,000 does include money for the scope that needs to get added back in to put that ceiling system back in.
Anthony, why don't
Okay.
you explain what DFIS is?
DFIS is direct applied. It's like a stucco for everybody's out there, but it's directly applied to a substrate. It's a little different from standard EFIS. There's no insulation involved with that. But I guess talking to the mason, it is very labor intensive work. So even though that small area that we defined with TSKP and looked in the drawings, it's pretty labor intensive. So we were pleasantly surprised that we had that money coming back. Okay. Item 30, I'm still currently working out with the general trades subcontractor, the change in the deck material from ePay to a teak product or something similar. Right now, he's reached out to a couple lumber yards to see what the cost is on that. I haven't seen anything come through at this point in time, but we are still chasing that. That's why it's still in the pending. All right. Item 31, which is the HPC thermal coating applied by the painter. He gave us a value engineering number of $20,000 credit coming back. That has been approved and applied. Okay. Item 32 and item 33, we did reach out to the drywall supplier, gypsum drywall package, based on TSKP's recommendations and notes. Right now, we're trying to take a look if there's some added additional costs there. But right now, those two numbers that you see there have been approved and are true numbers from the gypsum drywall subcontractor. Okay. Let's see here. Reduction item 34, reduction in interior storefront first floor, and item 35, reduction of interior and storefront at the second floor. We are still pursuing with our storefront subcontractor these costs, as well as the reduction of interior storefront. I think this is a duplicate and all around. Okay. Item 38, I know Deanna and TSKB have been working with the library staff on a reduction in millwork. This hasn't changed from our last meeting. We do have a credit coming back of $27,000 based on reduction amounts received here. I know TSKP and Deanna, like I said before, have been in touch with the library staff to agree and come upon terms of what that scope of work would be. But right now we have a $27,000 credit coming back for that. Remove the double width ground face CMU at stair 1. I did finally get pricing from the mason late this afternoon. That was, I believe, a $4,000 credit coming back to remove the double width and retain that ground face block going all the way up. Okay. Item 40, plaza stone retaining walls. We kept this in the pending column, but we have reached out to the mason and the concrete subcontractor who will be providing the concrete architectural finish. Right now, with that number being said, that's a $50,000 credit coming back to the job, and that includes the concrete number and that cost. Item 41, we're reduction alternates of the light fixtures. We were thinking maybe that we could chase, a reduction in amount of lighting fixtures required. We're still chasing that with the electrician. Millwork design, we've talked to TSKP about a potential alternate design for display cases. Item 43, general trades. This was a bridge dyno grip at the decking strips. They are still looking into the cost savings for that. And these 45, 44, 45, 46, these are some small electrical items that we have come across as far as some lighting packages for the site lights, a change in some exit signs to thermoplastic, and a light to day bright flux guard. So they gave us a little bit of savings there. Another one that came in that we were chasing with RZ from MJ Daily, who is our plumbing subcontractor, is a substitute of cast iron underground piping with PVC. That was a cost savings value engineering that got approved, coming back to the job of $25,000. And then we have reached out to our roofer who provides a safety garlock railing system to use their own instead of purchasing with new. That was a $15,000 credit also coming back to the job. As you can see here in this line item below the garlock is a VE contingency. I just want to put the caveat and just let everybody know that these numbers may shift a little bit based on once these new drawings do come out and they do get revised. We are going to send it to the affected subcontractors to have them formally price. Everybody's got to understand that obviously these are, you know, rough order of magnitude pricing, and the numbers might shift a bit. So that's why we have that $25,000, let's call it a VE contingency, to basically regulate the cost of the value engineering. So as you could see, all the recommended and all the approved, the item number 2s, we are over $750,000 mark by, you could see that 783. So that total is, you know, you're over by 33,000 with that $25,000 contingency to hopefully adjust for any swing once those drawings do get finalized. Nancy?
Yeah, two questions. 2 weeks ago, as I'm looking back in the minutes, we were at $813,000, and it looks like we've gone down.
Yep.
Even with that $25,000 credit, we're still off that mark. Can you give
Right.
us
With that being said, we did, after our meeting with TSKP, we did lose a few of the items that we were circulating and that we were hoping that will be approved. For instance, would be this Plaza Stone retaining wall of $50,000. Okay, so that was one item that TSKP and Downs reviewed, and it is very integral. It's important to the building to receive that stone of veneer at the retaining wall. So that's the reason why you're off by about 50 grand.
Okay, and another thing I noticed that there were some other pending ones on this list before that seemed to have fallen off. Specifically, the ductwork for a commercial kitchen that was outside of the scope. And I see that it's not on here, so. can you
Correct.
tell me
We
what
did
happened to
remove that. Yeah, we did remove that. We did get confirmation from our HVAC subcontractor, MJ Daly, that they priced that alternate that was in the drawing
No,
correctly.
not the alternate. We asked, the alternate was not the ductwork. There was ductwork that was in the base bid as opposed to the add alternate for the other stuff, for the hood and something else. So.
Right, so the hood was the alternate, and there was they did not price any branch lines of ductwork to that hood.
Okay,
Okay,
Anthony, I think to clarify that, I think the way I understand it from the communication from our contractor is that the ductwork that is to support that hood is included in the alternate.
okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Anthony, I just want to make
Yep.
it clear to everybody that recommended list, that column, which you refer to as approved, means that the architect is supporting those items, and I'll give Taisu and Richard a chance to confirm that. And that it has also passed the hurdle of at our owners meeting where we had some preliminary discussions. But in general, we are looking for full committee approval on these items, hopefully tonight or most of these items, so that TSKP can do what they need to do to adjust drawings and so forth. Taisu, and Richard, is that correct? That you're good with the recommended items?
Yes, Mark, I'd like to make a comment before that. Item 40, the stone wall, that is right main entrance area containing the front plaza. So it is very visible place as you come in from the Thompson's or Mountain View Road. You're gonna see first this wall, and the changing from stone wall to just plain concrete, it will be a mistake, and I think you will not be very happy about that because you know, if the concrete is well done, beautifully done, may be acceptable, but we know the craftsman of this project, this concrete is not really a high trained architecture concrete people. And I've seen often we end up, you know, lots of pot mark and cracks and so on. So we end up parging this concrete, and I think you're gonna regret it. That's why we objected this included in this value engineering. And I highly recommend not to accept this stone wall changing to concrete, and that's why it's $50,000 was not included in recommended. And beside that, everything else we went through with the downs, and we discussed every item one by one, and we are comfortable with it. And I think this does not downgrade or visually not acceptable kind of item. So we accept every one of this is a good value engineering item.
All right, thank you, Taisu. That item is not in the pending, it's not in the recommended, and we have time to take it off the list. I'd rather not get into a conversation tonight about that particular item. I really want to focus on what is on the recommended side at this point, so we can move forward. Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real quick question. I wanted to know if the pending items, Anthony, if those would be included at some point into that total with the recommended, what would that total become?
Right now, I don't know, but yes, those will be, once we get those numbers that we're still working on from our subcontractors, those will be added. And I do think that this, a big one will be the alternate lighting package. I think there could be some savings there as well. All right.
Okay, and the one other item I just thought of, I know Nancy mentioned a couple, unfortunately I didn't bring my other list with me, but I know we talked about tiling in some of the staff restrooms. I didn't hear that on this list.
Yeah, we also removed that one with our meeting with TSKP. We realized that, the little bit of cost savings there isn't really worth it. So,
it wasn't a lot.
Public place. These are public bathrooms. So, we'll make them, we'll keep them like they designed.
Right. Okay, good. All right. I think that's all I had for now, but thank you.
Chris?
So I'm not sure exactly. I know it sounds like we might go to a vote. So I just want to kind of return to the millwork because especially now that we may end up with mostly, I know we're going to do something to McMahon, but not the vision we had. We were pretty uncomfortable with a lot of it because we worked very hard to maximize the spaces through the millwork, through the shelving, the cabinetry, the countertops. And there's a couple of them there that we didn't mind, but a lot of it, this even includes all of our kitchen counters and our kitchen cabinets. So I just feel like for $27,000, considering where the project is now, we're just not that comfortable with it. So I don't know if that has to be decided tonight, but that is something that the library is concerned with. We worked pretty hard on that design.
All right, so it sounds like you need more work on that item to approve it. That you're not happy with it now?
Not really, because we're not even sure exactly how that 27 applies to those different areas. There's some of those areas like the study rooms we had no problem with whatsoever. But the kitchen, the circulation office where we do all of our sorting, it's very small. So we use the counters and cabinet design to really maximize that space. So it's just one of our concerns. Consider.
Well, I want to make sure you've seen you know, every detail of what that talks about. And I think that's easy enough to take care of, you know, and, you know, I don't have any problem moving it off the approved list right now, if you need more time with it.
I think we just like one more discussion with TSKP on that to understand exactly what we'd be cutting.
Okay, I'm okay with that. And we can get into the details of that at another time. More questions about this? Can we get a motion to approve what's on this recommended list except for item 38, reduction of millwork?
So moved.
By Mr. Ike, do we have a second?
Second.
From Jesse? I think that was Jesse.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. All right. Further discussion before we vote?
Chair,
Patrick?
can the motion also include the contingent, you know, approval contingent upon, you know, the rest of the pending items? I'm not sure, how do we handle those pending items? I don't have a problem approving what we recommended. But what do we do about the pendings?
My understanding is they're still working on them, and this this does not preclude accepting more items.
So do we just say we do a maybe the next time we meet, we'll know what the pendings are, and then so we approve this without the pendings, and then we come back and do another additional approval for inclusion of the pendings?
I don't really want to put a time limit on it. I think we're open to making these changes whenever.
Okay.
But I understand what you're saying. We don't want to limit ourselves to these.
Right.
You want to make an amendment like,
I think I would ask to the maker of the motion to do a friendly amendment that we could include the pending items in the recommended column once they're finalized.
So accepted, Patrick. So accepted.
Thank you, Bob.
And our seconder, Jesse, you accept that?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. More discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
We're gonna get this.
Instead, I got y'all.
You got all the ayes, Nancy?
Yes.
Any nays? Then the motion passes. All right. Thank you, Anthony, for that. And I know you guys are continuing to work on more items. All right. Anything else from Downs?
I think that's about it. You guys will have kind of another few cracks at this list, because once we do finalize numbers that are what we would consider official based on TSKP's documents, we will be bringing them back really as part of the formal change management process. So this is certainly not the last time you'll see this list and have an opportunity to talk about it. And we would not allow this list or any of the approvals to affect the schedule. If it does start to affect something, we will bring it to everybody's attention.
All right, thanks, Tom and Anthony. All right, so let's go to TSKP. We've got Tai Sue and Richard here, and I will give you the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. So first I want to ask, first of all, I want to congratulate the committee for getting to this, another major milestone in the project. We appreciate the discussion about the VE items. It's an important item, and we want to implement these changes in some form, whether we do it in sketch form or whether we replace certain sheets, we still need to determine. But for starters, I would like to ask Tom, if you could forward that VE list, or Anthony, if you could forward that VE list. We'd like to get our team started on making those document adjustments.
Absolutely. I'll get that over to you right now.
Okay, great. And then also, Tom, if I could ask you to forward that project schedule, that would also be very helpful.
All right, Anthony, just include that in the same email. It's in the same file.
Great, thanks. So what I would like to do, Mark, if I may, is pick up on an item that you brought up earlier, which is the McMahon project, which has been part of this project for quite some time. I would like to ask Tom if you could share with us what the bid number was for the McMahon project, again, just to remind everybody, and also remind everybody what monies would be available today for the McMahon project, if you could remind everybody of that.
The bid number, it's funny you asked that because I was actually looking at that on my computer. What would have been an anticipated GMP, if you will, I believe was 10,071,000. Right, and a total project budget would have been, including the soft cost, would have been 12,809,000. We have to essentially kind of recast the total project budget, so I don't want to misstep or misspeak on identifying what is remaining, because some of those percentages change just a little bit. But I believe at one point you were in the $2 million range, Mark.
Yeah, I've been rounding a number to something around 2.5 million. Understanding what you're saying, it will change when you solidify what's going on with Prosser, but that 2.5 million was project cost, construction
Right, total
and
project
soft
cost.
cost.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes here from the council.
Plus or minus.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes from the council meeting, and when you just simply take the delta of the proposed 32.8 million for Prosser, it left 2.4, 2.5 roughly, Richard, just to give you an idea.
Okay, that's very helpful. And I think it's a good reminder to the committee on the task going forward for McMahon. What shall we do about McMahon? I think we should discuss that with the committee before anything is decided. I suppose there could be some options to be explored, and we can certainly help with discussing those options. But the project as bid certainly cannot be built for that amount of money remaining. So one option might be to put the project on hold until some additional funding could be obtained, and then we proceed with the building of McMahon as designed when that funding is available. And that's an uncertain timeline, but that's something that maybe the committee would want to discuss as an option. Another option might be to scale back the work for McMahon and just build whatever we can for the monies that are available. You're not going to be able to do everything that you hope to do at McMahon, but some prioritization of components of that project need to be discussed. And then a decision made about proceeding with the monies that are available. Yet another option that comes to mind is starting over with McMahon in order to allow you to apply for a library grant. You know, and if you apply for a library grant, you might be eligible to get, I don't know, $1 million grant, maybe a $2 million grant. I think that's the cap now on library grants. But that has a timeline of its own. That's going to take some time. But that could be one option that the committee chooses in order to maybe potentially even double the amount of money that is available for McMahon if you get the library grant. And I guess a fourth option just came to my mind. I think I'm up to four. Fourth option came to my mind, and it came from Patrick's suggestion when he was discussing it, which is just find more funding through other sources, whether it's CIF or other sources, not just the library grant. And that could have a timeline of its own. So I don't think the committee is ready to make a determination about which direction they want to take, but I'd like to hear from the committee of what thinking they may have had now that we have some direction from the town council.
Yeah, thanks, Richard, for putting some thought into that. I know it's important that we explore any reasonable option at this point and understand the parameters of, what that all means, the various options in terms of dollars and time, how it all jives with what's happening at Prosser, how it jives with our swing space, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, thanks for, outlining, or at least bringing up some of those. And yeah, let's have a little discussion here. Eva?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. The first thing is, let me mention the library grant rules were being rewritten completely. I haven't seen the new ones yet. They were anticipated to be out sometime close to July, August. But when you say starting over, that would mean absolute zero. And we may not be able to do that because some of those rules, I think, had to do with funding and seeking even the referendum. So we already may be disqualified. That's something that would probably require legal review from the town attorney, but I think this is not an easy determination when it comes to a grant from the state library. Some of the rules have already changed. I'm not sure that some of them are things that we'd be able to comply with already. Even if we decided that we had to hire an architect again, hire a construction company, all of those things, the referendum itself may preclude that, but we actually need legal counsel, I think, to review that. Having said that, I think from my perspective as a board person, I've heard things thrown around, such as from some in town in various positions, sprucing up McMahon, other terms that have to do with a very minimal effort that is really about appearance only. And I will go right back to where we were in the beginning, when all of us who were looking at programmatic space talked about the kinds of things that were critical to a library. And that's, you remember hearing me say endlessly, it has to be adaptable and flexible. Right now, for anybody who is not aware, McMahon is basically one large room. Much of this was aimed at not having that be the case anymore. So there are so many things that would need to be considered and discussed before you could come up with a plan for McMahon. And, if what you have is 1/6 basically of the funding left for the project, there are items that all have to be considered before you can actually even think about where you're really going to go with this. Endless problems with this. We would need to identify and remediate all current issues that we're aware of with that structure. There are security needs that are totally unmet currently that are at this point crucial and have been problems. So they aren't repair per se, but when you have a building that has no security cameras, no panic buttons, no automatic emergency notifications, all of those things may not be paint and they may not be pretty, but they are really important. Fire suppression systems and alarming systems that tie in with the other emergency systems. Access control, which is right now not adequate. How do we make that space work for multiple uses? When we're looking at adaptability and flexibility, movable dividers or walls, the same things we talked about, say in the kids section in Prosser, have to apply to this space. There is no meeting room. There is no community room. There are no study rooms. All of these things, we tried to meet there as a board. We wound up with one panel shoved over against some chairs so that we could sit in the corner while the library was trying to function and meet as a board. You know, there are tech needs that have to be met, and some of that is equipment, but some of that is actually infrastructure. There's a business center to consider because that's a huge use area for our patrons. All of these things have, this is not going to be a process that we can sit down for a couple of hours someday and say, so what do you think, and make a list. We spent how long planning this facility? We can't just take a few hours and say, hey, let's just do this and that'll be cool. We are talking about the bulk of the population in this town. The greatest population density is there. We have already said to these people, you are not getting your library, basically, to then come back and say, and by the way, what we're worried about is coat of paint or some really aesthetic issues, and not whether or not this works for you when you have critical needs, is just not okay. We can't do that. So as a committee, we have a responsibility to ensure that we do our very best to meet those needs of the user population. And we're already seeing astonishing use. I think Chris can report on this to you. The use we're already seeing, even in our current temporary state, is much more than we anticipated. When we are actually reopening buildings, that will, according to every study we have looked at from all over the United States, rise. We have to consider that as well, especially in a facility like McMahon, where the growth has been exponential over time when you look at the use figures that we are seeing. So I just wanted to say that, and I appreciate the opportunity before we start discussing, because we are really not even in a position at this point to discuss. We have to go back to a drawing board for a lot of the function that we need to see there. I don't see that there's any easy fix. And I do agree that we do need to seek more funding. There's another CIF round coming. Why wouldn't we ask? What's the worst that can happen? They tell us no. We're no further ahead than we were, but we're not behind. But what if they give us more money and we get to add more to this facility that is sorely needed, so that we can do what we promise people, which is deliver service? So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Ava. I want to make it clear to you and everybody that what I intended here for discussion is exactly what you're calling for, the beginning of an in-depth process to understand what makes sense for this building. And so, I do not expect us to be designing this in a few hours, just the opposite. I am hoping that we can move forward and engage TSKP to start this process in earnest and take into consideration everything you just talked about. They are very familiar with the building. They're familiar with our needs. They're familiar with the programs that have been developed. They're creative people. And so that's what I mean by discussion here, is getting this going in that direction. It's going to be a long road. The less money you have, the harder it is to prioritize. So there's, like you said, there's a lot to be decided here in what we do eventually, and the options are pretty broad at the moment, and that's good. And I think we need to keep it that way and figure out what's going to make sense ultimately in terms of cost and time. Patrick.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Chair. I again, my memory is slipping, but when, and I don't have my other papers, when did we say in our project plan that we would start work on McMahon? I think it was like 6 or 8 months after we started Prosser. Is that, can you help me with that?
They were to occur concurrently.
Oh, they were to occur. Okay, I must be thinking of a different
Yeah, that was the plan all along.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that kind of messes I guess what I was gonna throw out is, if there was sort of another, hybrid option that between, say, numbers, 1, 2, and 4, I don't know, where we would, start to have these discussions, as everyone is mentioning, and, continue to look for funding. And, is it possible to identify some work that could actually begin that wouldn't interfere with the rest of the project? And I mean, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here, other than, if we're still looking for funding, we have some money left, we're going to do more than aesthetics and cosmetics. Is there work that we would be able to identify that could take place that wouldn't prohibit additional work from being done if we got more funding? So if that makes any sense, is that like another hybrid option that we could look at?
I think that's a great idea, Patrick. In other words, it almost says we're gonna do 2 projects on, we're gonna spend the money we have now, and it's not gonna interfere with when we get more money to do other things.
Right.
And it all fits a master plan.
Right. So it would be sort of a mini plan or a sub plan to the bigger plan.
Yeah, if that's, I'm sure, that can be looked at and.
Okay, so
see if there's
that would
something
be the
practical
option I
to
would
show.
throw out, the hybrid, sort of hybrid.
And we're not limited to whatever options we talked about tonight.
Sure, sure.
I have a goal here, of letting TSKP loose on this,
I mean, the only other thing I would say is, at some point, we may be able to go back to council with another request for a referendum at some point. I'm not saying we can do that now, but maybe after budget starts in March, in earnest, they start doing the budgeting, maybe, there's a time we can go back and have an adjusted, maybe we'll have a better idea of the amount that we might need or something like that. We can always go back for another referendum. If we get additional funding, would we reduce the need? And, we'd have a better idea of the budget for next year, the grand list, so on and so forth. Maybe it's possible that, next year at this time, we, potentially look at going back for another request for a referendum.
You are a very hopeful person, Patrick.
Yes, I am. I like to be optimistic and look at that.
Very good. Good. Are you all set, Patrick?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Chip.
I just would recommend conducting some sort of conditions assessment, current conditions assessment as part of this initial. Ava touched on it, but understanding the condition of the roof, the condition of mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, really the infrastructure, windows, doors, so that those items can be included in any planning, because you don't want to spend a lot of money on the spruce up if your infrastructure is failing. So that would be one of my recommendations as part of this initial look.
Yeah, I think certainly TSKP would build that in order to set priorities that make sense. You don't want to be putting a coat of paint on a wall that's coming down. Sorry about that reference, Ava, to a coat of paint. We're obviously going to look at what makes sense here in the long run. Lois.
I guess that as we go forward, I think these are great ideas, and I'm committed that we should get McMahon to a point where it is what we had hoped it would be. But I think we need to also understand what is our relationship to the town council. Are they in fact telling us to go forward on this project indefinitely? Hoping that we can make McMahon what we had anticipated and what everybody thinks it needs to be? Or do they think we're done? I just don't know where we stand. And I guess I would like some clarity with that.
We have no direction from the town council other than the obligation to spend money on McMahon as a result of the referendum wording. That is all we have at this point. So I think as we develop options, we need to maintain communications with the town council. And understand if their feelings toward the things that we are looking at. And what might make sense or not to them as we go forward.
And I hope that you'll ask for that clarity from them as we make suggestions that may help them come to some clarity. But we really don't know where we stand at the moment, and I think we deserve to know. We've been working at this for quite a long time now. And if we're going to continue on and ask all of these people who've been helping us to continue, we need to know what the parameters are. And so
I'm sorry.
ask that you do ask them that. In the meantime, we don't have enough money to do much of anything at McMahon, really, along the lines that Ava has described are needed. What we might be able to do is get this moving van that goes around to everybody. I don't know whether that would be within the town council's idea of what you could do, but it certainly would be something that was creative while we're trying to do something else more permanent at McMahon.
Yeah, I'm sure bond council would frown on that. We can't use, our funds.
Well, it's capital.
It's not McMahon.
Depends on how you
They're taking
define.
the sign off the building and putting it on a truck.
All depends on how you define things.
Yeah. Okay, Ava?
Yeah, just to be clear, the referendum wording refers to repairs to the libraries. I think we would need legal counsel there, but I would bet the farm that as much as I would adore having a bookmobile, I don't think we can do that. That's something we certainly don't want to abandon, and it's something we've pursued, and the council declined to pursue that option at this time. Doesn't mean we won't ask again or look for some money to do it, because the staff has been writing grants every time they find an opportunity. So it's not like we're not hoping to do that, but making sure that we actually have a sprinkler system is probably going to come first.
So Richard and Tai-Sue, what's it gonna take to get you guys to look at these conceptual options in a little more detail, report back to us in 2 weeks and maybe in 4 weeks?
Well, I think that I've heard some very interesting ideas this evening. Including Patrick's suggestion about maybe going back to referendum. This idea of McMahon van intrigues me, but I understand that that may not be acceptable. But there's some very interesting thoughts here. All of them have different timelines. What I would suggest, at least for the next couple of weeks, is for us to put some of these things down on paper and compare the timelines for each of these. I think that could inform the committee more and be able to continue the discussion. I think in 2 weeks' time, we're not going to have any conclusion, but I think what I'd like to do is the opportunity to put some of these thoughts on paper so that we can continue the discussion going forward. And what would it take? I think the best thing to do is probably to proceed on an hourly basis. And I think that we could do that within the next couple of weeks and come back to the committee at its next regular meeting. How many hours? I'm not sure, but I'm willing to commit to a total cap if that's what would make the committee comfortable. And I'm willing to commit to a cap of $4,000. And that's a number that comes to my mind because when we were asked to look at the swing space, I suggested the same thing, that we pursue that on an hourly basis, not knowing where we would end up. And the committee authorized us to proceed not to exceed $7,200, which we did not exceed. In fact, I think the total that we billed the committee for that effort was like under $3,000. So that's the number that came to my mind, and we can certainly put a cap of $4,000, not to exceed that, as we explore these options.
Well, it's not clear in my mind what we are pursuing here, because it really needs a lot of basic idea of discussion generated by committee, and because we kicked around several different scenarios of additional funding here. But what are we looking at? Are we looking at we have just $2 million and what can we do with this? Or we talking about 4 million, 5 million? It's an idea, dollar will define what we can do. So I think before we jump into option study, we need some guideline from committee saying that, certain dollar amount, what can they do? Without that, I think we just going into dark and throwing out something. So we need some input from committee, what kind of dollar amount we are talking about. That makes sense.
Well,
Without that, the option is, or are you looking from us this suggestion of plan A, plan B, plan C, and each one has certain attached dollar amount? Are you looking from us that dollar amount?
Well, yes, I think we're looking for those A, B, C plans without, I don't think we can, like you said, we can't be looking at floor plans or elevations, or I think we can be looking at some generalized scope and timelines. If we are to pursue a state library grant, there's a timeline associated with that. Granted, we don't have all the answers yet on their new rules, et cetera, but I think we can put some parameters on a timeline on that scenario. If we're going to go after CIF money, there's a different timeline, and I'm repeating what Richard said earlier. There's a different timeline there. We've already been, I think, 9 months or so since we applied for the CIF funds, or is that since they were approved? But it's been, we don't have the money yet. We still have that one last hoop to go through, with DEP. So there's a very lengthy timeline for CIF funds, but let's look at what is it? I think we can put that down on paper. And with those sort of generalized options, we can then make a decision about which ones to pursue, and then have those discussions with you, Taisu, about prioritizing the program aspects and what can we buy for $2.5 million versus 5 versus 10, versus the 12 we're looking at now. Of course, the 12 today is 14 tomorrow by the time we, actually implement these things. So there's those factors as well, the time and escalation. But does that make sense to you, Taisu? Just those general kind of parameters of these options?
Okay, Mark, you're talking, I guess my thought is jumping too much ahead, the design aspect. I guess
Right.
Now I am understanding you are looking from us plan A, B, C, and basic strategy, how we're going to go next step. And
Yes.
certainly we can, do a research without much input from your committee, our options, not really solutions, but several scenarios, different scenarios. That
Yes.
I guess we can pursue that, so that once you look at what's possible within certain perimeter, and then you can more hone in to let's see what can we do, plan B, plan C, and then we can, next step, we can go further. At that time, we really need input from staff and the library side so that we can actually draw something. But I think this first step is not, drawing anything or plan anything, and that I think makes sense. Okay, Mark.
That's correct.
I
That's,
need a little more clearer view how we proceed this first step.
yeah, we're not putting the pencil in your hand.
I
yet.
know.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
but that will give us, at that point, to Lois's point, information to start sharing with town council. Here are the various kinds of scenarios and timelines. What makes sense, what doesn't, to the town council. And I think that kind of input at that point would be helpful to the building committee on where to spend our energy, on moving forward.
So Mark, are you looking for a motion for that?
I am, thank you. We need a motion to let TSKP proceed on an hourly basis not to exceed $4,000 with concepts of moving forward with McMahon Wittenberry Library.
So moved.
Moved by Patrick. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for purposes of discussion.
All right, thank you, Lois. We have a second. All right, so more discussion. Lois.
Is this a typical request for an architectural team? It seems to me like it's, I think it's great if they're willing to think about it, but is this the sort of thing that they do best? Is there some other planning group that should be thinking about possibilities for this library and budgets associated with each possibility? It just seems, I think it's great if we have somebody who can do that, feels comfortable doing it. But is there another way that this kind of thing gets done?
I would say there are others out there that could do this, but I'm comfortable. Is basically, this is what TSKP did for us from the beginning of these projects that we have.
Well, they weren't doing the funding, Mark. This has to do with funding sources and timelines for those funding sources. It's not, are you going to build a library or are you going to rejuvenate an old library? It's 5 or 6 different approaches to using the money you have, getting more money from various sources, going to referendum. It just seems to me that's a little more complex maybe than what they normally do, or a different avenue.
Richard, Taisu, you want to comment on that?
I can comment on that. We're very familiar with the program that was written for McMahon. We're very familiar with the existing conditions. I think it's only a little bit of additional work pertaining to research with various grant sources. We can reach out to CIF funding. I know I've looked at that previously. They do also have a calendar. I think we just missed an application deadline. I think it was at the end of June in order for a grant that will be issued in November, for example. But we can reach out to CIF and see what their timeline is. So finding that information, I think, is achievable. We can also reach out to the State Library Board and find out as best we can their current process. So again, it will be a little bit of extra effort to find that kind of information. But I think we can help you because of our background already with your program and with your facility.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Mark, we're happy to assist in that process too, as we're going to be, well underway with construction, and our staff is, kind of at your beck and call, or, at that point anyway. So we're here for support, if we need to coordinate referendums, budgets, things like that.
That would be very helpful. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom, for that. Other questions? We have a motion. All right, no other questions? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right?
Aye.
Jesse, do we still have you there?
You're done? No.
I know, Nancy, can you go around and ask, please?
Sure. Lois,
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
Bob Ike,
Aye.
Jesse White, Mark Weissman,
Chair votes aye.
I think that's all we
Jesse-
have for now. I'll get back with Jesse.
All right, yes, so it did pass. Thank you very much. I think Jesse moved to his phone. Okay, so TSKP, you can move forward from this and report back to us in a couple weeks.
Yes, we can do that. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anything else from you guys? You're all set, Richard? and Ted?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go to our owner rep, Chip.
Right. Good evening, everyone. The biggest thing still outstanding is the emergency light at the atrium branch. As I did get in touch with the ownership group, and it does look like that adding to the emergency generator is not going to be possible, which leaves us to the most effective and efficient means and from a time and money standpoint is going to be installing emergency light fixtures around the space. Glenn did a great job of walking several electricians through and getting proposals from them. I know that Nancy included those 4 proposals in the package for the committee. So I think it's going to be important to make a decision on that so that we can move forward. We did get a temporary certificate of occupancy that buys us some time, allows the library to open while this is finalized, but we do need to get going on it because there will be lead time in getting materials and getting labor and everything else.
Okay. Well, congratulations on getting our temporary certificate of occupancy and for the swing space opening. That all happened since our last meeting. So thanks, Chip, and thank you, Glenn and BPW for all the help and continued help on that. Appreciate that. Questions for Chip? Okay. All right. Let's see. We have anything from outreach? I know Elizabeth is not with us. Chris?
Yeah, I'll use the outreach section to just speak to what's actually happening, which is part of the outreach. I will start by saying that everyone in the public or anyone who's wondering what's going on should always look at our website, bplct.org, our social media presence, or just call us. Both of our phone numbers from both McMahon and Prosser are being answered all the time. So you can just call the numbers you already know. But yeah, for some good news, the atrium is open. We've been serving about 40 people a day this week. And except for some complications finding us, which we're working on with some signage ideas, people have been really positive, really positive. One woman walked up today and said, wow, it's a whole library up here. So it's been a really good, once people get into the space, they see it, they use it, they realize all the services are there. And the 330 Park Tech Space is extremely popular, and with many people who normally use McMahon. And we can say safely that in the last 5 weeks, we've served over 700 people between these 2 locations. So I think our service model is starting to really come together. And so it's exciting. We have walkie-talkies for the first time. We're managing all the traffic in and out of the building. We're starting to get very friendly with our atrium colleagues that work there. People love the library that are there, that work in the building. And I think it's working out quite nicely now that we've been able to go. So it's exciting. It's good news.
Great, thank you, Chris. And thanks for the successful move over there. Let's see. So, Leah, anything for us tonight?
Nothing on space planning, though. Obviously, with everything kind of changing with McMahon, we may end up meeting soon, but so much is up in the air. But now that we have a better idea of what direction we're going in with McMahon, I would like to schedule a meeting of whatever we're calling this committee that's going to look into getting more funding. So keep an eye out for that. I am starting a new job next week, though, so I don't know how much help I will be, but I will work on that soon.
All right, well, good luck with that. All right, thanks, Leah. So let's go to Nancy. What have you got for us?
I've got hot
got a
off
bunch
the
of stuff.
press, half off the press. Is a proposal to move forward with Anderson Electrical Contractors to do the emergency lighting at the swing space. This is a $18,000 proposal, and I would also like to thank Glenn for getting these quotes. And I'm also happy to say that this can count towards our MBE goals, as this is a certified minority business contractor. So I would look for permission to move forward with the purchase for $18,000 with Anderson Electrical.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike. Do we have a second?
Second,
Second by Lois. Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we're not hearing from Jesse, but we have 4 ayes. Motion passes.
Okay, the next two I'm going to tell you are both a request for a purchase and an approval of a payment. The first one is for custodial supplies for swing space. This is New England Industrial Supply, and their quote is in the amount of $1,542.08, which upon receipt we would pay. So I would be looking for a motion to both approve the purchase plus approval of the invoice.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by,
Second.
second by Patrick. Thank you very much. Questions, discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
And the next one is TK Elevator Corporation. This is for the believe it or not, the maintenance to keep the elevator and processor going. So this is only $636.96. So I would ask for approval for purchase and payment of this.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike,
second,
seconded by Lois. I have a question.
I have a question. Yeah.
Why is this project funds? Simple
Because
question.
these are the things that keep the building maintained, just like the custodial supplies or the electricity at both buildings while we are in swing space. It's to support an unoccupied building. And by the way, this is just quarterly, so it's not the full year.
Oh, I see. It's a maintenance contract
Yes,
thing.
Yes.
Do we need, well, I assume, bad word, but is this the last one of these we'll be having?
it should be, since the building's coming down with any luck in the end of next quarter.
There will not be any elevator to maintain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was my question. Patrick, did you have the same question? You got it.
Pretty much, but I was just curious too, like, I thought would this be paid from the project monies or the town monies?
This is the
Because-
project money.
Oh, okay, because I thought we had no money in the budget to maintain the buildings for the,
We don't have money for occupied buildings. The bond council has said that we are able to do some minor upkeep and maintaining unoccupied buildings.
yeah. Okay, so Nancy, I noticed on this invoice, so there were two charges of 636.96, but you're saying this is only
One of
for
those
one.
is, yes, one of those is for town hall, the other one is for Prosser. So
Oh,
you're only
okay.
authorizing the Prosser portion.
That was gonna be my question. Yeah, okay, gotcha. So one's town hall. I mean, I guess I'm okay with it, but can't we just say the elevator is shut down? I mean, why do we need the elevator to work in the next 3 months?
Well, I think at the time, because this did start on July 1st, if there had been any issues, and what if we had not gone forward with Prosser? And
Yeah.
gone forward with McMahon or not gone forward at all, we would still need to deal with this.
Hmm,
Yeah, it sounds like we have a little overlap there of
yeah,
this and that.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. No worries, thank you.
Other questions? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 And that's an aye from Lois, aye from me. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
And then finally, I have an invoice to approve to SLR, invoice 189266 for $2,500. This is the remaining portion of the stormwater management permit to
So
SLR.
moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, second
Second.
by Lois. Thank you very much. Discussion, questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right. That's good, Nancy. You good?
We are.
All right, thank you. So next meeting is September 6th, followed by September 20th. Happy Labor Day to everybody. Comments from the committee? Don't see any hands going once.
Mark,
Lois?
I continue to be concerned, particularly when we're taking big decisions, that more of our committee members are not represented. I really think that's a problem. These are big decisions. We all need to be responsible for them.
I will send out a memo. Hopefully we can get better attendance now that we're going to be under construction. Thanks,
Thank you.
Lois. Anybody else on the committee? No hands.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
Sorry, I know it's last minute. I just want to congratulate everybody for getting us, to this milestone, and also to congratulate our BPL staff for, getting the atrium set up and open and being able to provide services. I mean, it is amazing. And, I hope that some of this positive stuff gets out into the media instead of a lot of the negative things about the atrium. So, I know that the team is working on, the signage and so forth, but, there are plans in place to be able to get people to the atrium. So I just hope that they can be publicized and get that information out there. But, I just want to congratulate everyone for, getting it done and getting us here, and looking forward to the day where we can wear the hard hats and shovel our shovel load of dirt, right?
There you go.
Or collect a brick from the Prosser.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
Okay. Nancy, members of the public?
Yes, first we have Linda Pagani.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to add my voice to the chorus of congratulations for the swing space at BPL Atrium. I was there last week, and it's really beautiful. That's a beautiful building to begin with. I live in the area and I've always wanted to go inside, so now I have a chance to. But I also want to say that it was so nice to walk through it and see it in person in 3 dimensions after having seen it for so long just on paper. So it's, you know, it's just a very, it's very exciting that it's open. So, you know, thanks to everyone. Thank you.
We thank you, Linda. Any other hands?
Anyone else from the public?
Going once, going twice. All right, well, we thank you all for attending. It was a long meeting, but I think we covered a lot of important ground tonight. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Reich, seconded by
Patrick,
Patrick. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you again, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good night.